What is up, Ravens flock? Welcome in. This is Jordan with Ravens Flash Report, and today we're going to be doing a video preview for the upcoming matchup between the Baltimore Ravens and the Miami Dolphins. We're going to be discussing player group successes, performances from the defense over the last few games, how each quarterback has looked over the last few games, as well as my keys to the game for both teams in this Week 17 matchup between the number 1 and number 2 team in the AFC. Let's get to it.
They're going to get a Super Bowl out of me. Believe that. Believe that. I'm a Raven. It's on. All year. Every year.
So, first things first, for most of my videos, I do pull stats from the entire season, but it's week 17. So at this point, no team looks the same as it did at the start of the season. So a lot of the stats, at least as many as I could pull, are going to be from over the last 5 weeks, as I think it gives a more accurate reflection to what teams are actually going to be facing off against each other this Sunday. Having said that, we're going to get into the Dolphins' rushing offense, which is unfortunately an accumulation over the entire year's stats. So they are, as you guys can see on the screen now, Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane, who, rookie sensation, got injured. He has been injured off and on a little bit. Mostert as well has been off and on throughout the past couple of games. But overall, I think it can be said that the Dolphins' rushing offense is indeed up there with the upper echelon of rushing offenses in the NFL. Obviously, they have the lead in touchdowns and yards per average, but their effectiveness that goes along with the receiving and pass catching aspect of their offense, it's a very good tandem that I think works very well for this offense, and especially the two speedy backs that they have. This is a very fast offense overall, so having fast rushing attack also makes sense. For the Ravens' rushing offense, it's a little bit more diverse. Now, obviously, with Keaton Mitchell being out, we do see that there is more of a committee than there was even before when Mitchell was playing. But it goes back to a lot of Gus Edwards, a lot of Justice Hill. We didn't see Melvin Gordon recently in the 49ers game, but Lamar Jackson, of course, continues to run the ball effectively and efficiently. This is the number 1 rushing offense in the league, and we'll see if they continue that against the Miami Dolphins rushing defense. For the Dolphins passing offense, again, number 1 in yards, number 2 in yards per attempt, and number 3 in passing touchdowns. So where they falter a little bit, obviously, is that interceptions, which is middle of the pack. It's not too bad. But what they're going to be having to worry about in this upcoming game is Jalen Waddle does not appear like he is going to be able to go. It seems that high ankle sprain might keep him out. And so that means they are down to Tyreek Hill, who is a viable number 1 threat, obviously, looking at his numbers. The question now becomes, who is their number 2? Is it going to be Berrios? Is it going to be Smythe? Is it going to be who is it going to be that's going to fill in? Are they going to use Mostert in more of a receiving back type of role? So that's going to be something that the Dolphins offense is going to have to figure out. Once again, on the other side of the coin, the Ravens passing offense has been, again, sort of like their rushing offense, right? It's more of a committee, but there's no one player that you can simply shut down from a defensive standpoint, and the Ravens passing attack simply no longer work. We saw against Jacksonville that Isaiah Likely stepped up, and he was the number 1 option. We saw in the Bengals game that Odell Beckham was a huge threat in that game. He was the number 1 in that game. So the passing attack for the offense for the Ravens is more of a who is going to have a big game that day, as opposed to, all right, once we've covered this one person, that's all we have to worry about. So let's turn our attention now to those that are going to be passing the ball to these offensive players. Starting with Tua over his last 5 games, we do see that they are 4-1 with that strange loss to Tennessee. And what we can see from that is that was the game that Tyreek Hill was out. And now, is that the number 1 and only reason that they lost that game? No, they had a couple of breakdowns in defense. There was some weird, funky play with turnovers at the end of the game for them. But all in all, Tua, you can tell by the passer rating, he's been overall very good. He had the game against the Jets where he had a lower passer rating, mainly from his 1 touchdown to 2 interception ratio, which is that's the last interception that he's had over the last 5 games. So he's been pretty clean with the ball, except for fumbles where he had 2 against Tennessee and they had another one against Dallas. When taking a look at Lamar's numbers over the last 5 games, and really this whole season, it's hard to get a understanding of how well he has been playing purely from a numeric standpoint. And I'm sure a lot of fans of other teams are going to say the same thing about their quarterback. But with Lamar in particular, what he offers rushing the ball as well as passing the ball and simply making the plays that need to be made to win the game. And I'm not saying that everybody else is stat hunting or padding or anything like that. The way that they have scored has not always been through Lamar and through the air. They've been, obviously, like I said earlier, the number one rushing offense, and that shows in Lamar's numbers. Over the last 5 games, the Ravens have definitely been the dominant team. The exception being the Rams, who gave them a good bit of trouble, especially in the second half, but they were able to overcome. But you saw what happened last week against San Fran. They were smothered. The Ravens offense was able to do whatever it wanted to do, and that was enough to win the game. So he doesn't need to throw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns in every game. So when I was taking a look at some of the stats for the defenses for both the Dolphins as well as the Ravens, I saw kind of an interesting dynamic that appears to be across the board with both of these teams. And that is that if you take a look, these are not every defensive player or defensive stat over the last 5 games for them, but as you can see with the Jets, Commanders, Titans, the second Jets game, and the Cowboys game, the leader or what I would say the most impactful from a stat standpoint for each of these defenses, it changes, right? So the same 2 in the Jets game is not the same as in the Commanders game, is not the same as in the Titans game, or the second Jets game, or the Cowboys. So this defense is very diverse. It's very, again, dynamic. The same players are not always going to be making the plays. It's going to be a rotation. Sure, you're going to see Bradley Chubb up there. You're going to see these guys that you know are going to make plays, but they're not always going to be the star of the defense that week. And that's the same thing that goes for the Ravens. If you take a look at their Bengals, Chargers, Rams, Jags, and 49ers, again, the last 5 games that they've played, one thing that you'll notice is, yes, you're going to see Justin Madubuike up there, right? Because he's gotten a sack in pretty much every single game. But then you're going to see Kyle Hamilton's name mentioned. You're going to see Roquan Smith. You're going to see Patrick Queen, Jadeveon Clowney. So it's not reliant on one player, star player, always making the play every time. It's a multiple defense where anybody can have their day, right? We saw that with Kyle Hamilton against the 49ers last week, and that was his second week in a row that he had a great performance. So let's get into the keys of victory for the Dolphins here. So this is sort of my breakdown on what the Dolphins need to do to succeed against the Ravens. The Ravens' run defense is still a bit of a question mark to me, and I'm not really sure if they have an answer for the Dolphins' fast and receiving threats that they offer as well from the backfield. So that would be something for the Dolphins to be paying attention to. Also, getting the ball out quick. Again, the Ravens, they do lead the league in sacks. Dolphins are right behind them, but they do lead the league in sacks, and Tua needs to get the ball out quickly, which he has been doing this season. On defense, trying to contain Lamar. I say this every week. It's very difficult to do. It's so much easier said than done, I know. I know. I've never really tried myself. I'd love to try. Look humiliated. And then the last one here, Ravens O-line still looks shaky at times. They played well against the 49ers, but again, you're playing with a lead and you're playing with your defense that is dominant. And if that's not necessarily the case, then how does the pass protection look? How does Ronnie Stanley look? How does his knee look? So that's certainly something for the Dolphins to pay attention to. And again, the Ravens' keys to victory here on the other side, Tyreek is going to be the focus. So with Waddle out, or supposedly out, that could change last minute, of course, but with him potentially being out, then Tyreek obviously becomes the main threat, at least for the secondary for this Ravens defense. Again, pressure Tua into bad throws, right? So it's like what we said for Tua to get the ball out quickly in their keys. For the Ravens' keys, it's going to come down to make him get the ball out quickly, right? Force him into these bad throws, these bad decisions. For the offense, take what the defense gives you. So if they're stacking the box, throw it on them. If they look like, it's a light box and they're covering, deep in the secondary, then fine, run it on them. So just the Ravens have been doing that all year. So keep doing that, because at 12-3 seems to be working. Last but not least, protect the ball, right? We saw last week with the Ravens, especially, what the turnover battle can do to completely shift the focus of a game and completely change the game plan of your opponents. So we need to be in the driver's seat for the Ravens to protect the ball, right? We need to make sure that we don't turn the ball over so we can run the game plan that we have designed to win. And finally, from you guys, I want to hear your score predictions. I want to hear who you think wins this game. So my final score prediction, I have the Ravens winning 31-24. I think it will be a lot of ground and pound, especially from the Dolphins. I see them still taking a lot of shots to Tyreek, but with the focus being on him, I don't know how much of that actually gets connected, but I definitely still see it being a fairly high-scoring game. These are two of the best offenses in the league, the Dolphins being number 1 and the Ravens still being top 5 as well. So I think it'll be a high-scoring game, but I think it'll be a fun one. It'll be exciting. And like I said, put your comments